Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, another interesting story, another interesting guest. Just imagine being a bodybuilder, female bodybuilder. But before getting into that arena, you're learning to master the art of fear, but not just any fear, just fear in general. What is it going to take for me as a female to overcome my own obstacles and to set a course for success and fearlessness and still keep that beast mindset? Today on the show, we have a young lady whose social media is taking off like crazy because she has just done that. She's taken fear and turned it into fearlessness. Let's welcome to the show, Miss Amanda Vanderslice to the show. How you doing, Amanda?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on.
Louisiana, Bayou.
Yep, close to New Orleans.
How was that? Tell me what it's like to grow up. Did you grow up there because your name is German? Did you and a little bit of Italian? So is that where you was born and raised?
Yeah, well, my dad's that's not my dad's last name, but my dad is fully Italian, and his parents came over here from Sicily to New Orleans, and that's where my mom met my dad.
Okay, this may sound crazy as all I do, but we say crazy stuff on my show all the time. How do you come from Sicily to America, 50 different states to choose from? Most time when you hear Italians coming over, they're going straight to New York, man.
Well, the other half of his family did go to New York.
Okay.
They're up there in New York. I don't know why my grandparents chose New Orleans, but
What was it like for you growing up in growing up? Because the topic of the day is fearlessness. You have to in New Orleans with the Hurricane Katrina and all that kind of stuff going on there. You had to be tough before that even took place. What was it like growing up for you?
I don't feel like I feel like I was a very timid, fragile little kid. But I grew up actually on the West Bank, which is close to New Orleans,
Hmm.
um, in Gretna and Westwego. So we went to a little private school there. Well, my mom put me in a little private school. Um, and it was very strict religious, only a few people in our class. Um, and I think that's what put a lot of the fear in me too, from a very young age. I was always very sensitive and took
Hmm.
everything very seriously. So when I was raised that way and told that everything you did, God was watching and you're going to go to hell, um, it just put the fear in me.
So
And then
you
that my mom too, raising us very, very strict. It was just a lot of different things.
so you was indoctrinated into a fear based uh, uh, type of belief system as a young child, both in the school and through your parents as well, your mom.
Through my mom, yes. And to where we were usually in the poorer um areas of the West Bank moving around, so they weren't necessarily very safe.
Hmm.
So she would always tell me, can't go in the front yard by yourself. You got to play in the backyard. And she was robbed when I was younger and different things like that too. Just a lot of fear.
I never heard of the West Bank. What is that?
It's like over a bridge past New Orleans. Like you pass up, like, the area where you go to the French Quarter and all that, and you keep going.
So, like, I'm trying to go back a little bit. What was it that brought your father to New Orleans, the New Orleans area in Louisiana?
Well, that's where his parents and he lived. And then my mom and my dad weren't really together when I was growing up. I would just see him on the weekends.
When did you
And she
mention?
worked in the restaurant business
Huh?
back and forth. So she would go back and forth to New Orleans all the time to work.
Were you the only child?
No, I'm right in the middle. I have a brother that's 7 years older than me and another one that's 7 years younger.
You mentioned the school almost traumatized you into believing a certain way. When did that concept begin to change for you?
Really, when I got old enough, when we moved to the North Shore, I went to a little private school out here for a while, for a couple of years, and then in junior high, I started going to public school,
Mhm,
which was completely like I was very sheltered as a child with the things I was allowed to watch on TV, music, all of that.
mhm.
And then I went to a public school and it was just like completely different. I felt like, a fish out of water, having to figure out how to even be around other people like that, that wasn't in the church
Mhm.
and wasn't in that small little community.
So, like when you say small community, because you're German and Italian, you guys had your own little section that you hung that you was that you grew up with. You didn't grow up around any other nationalities, pretty much.
Oh, well, I grew up mostly like in my neighborhoods and everything. It was mostly African American. But what I mean by like the people that I was around like every day was at school, it was all through the church. Everybody that went to school there really went to church there too. So it's very, very close knit.
What were some of the struggles you had to deal with when you left that and went to the public school? Because public schools is not like that.
No, no, no. That it was a lot. It was hard trying to figure out how to socialize with other people, and like I said, I'd never been around anybody else that much except for some of my family that didn't live the way that I grew up living. They
When
just listened to different music. They were allowed to dress differently. Like I dressed in as a kid, I couldn't wear pants. I had to wear skirts and dresses. And that's
wow,
so I went from that to being, I don't know, by that time my mom just like she was so overwhelmed um that she wasn't as strict anymore. So I just kind of went wild,
when
trying
you
to find
say
my way.
went wild, what's going wild?
I started drinking at 15 and smoking weed and just trying to fit in, really.
Did your parents say anything to you with trying to fit in? Because you go from a religious narcissism type environment where they're telling you either do this or you're going to hell, into a situation where you're seeing people probably doing the same thing that you was being condemned for if you did in a different sector, and now you even taking part in the drinking, the weed, and all this. Did your mom and dad see that you was making a drastic turn here?
I don't really remember too much about like my dad's involvement in it. I don't think he didn't really try to stop it too much, but I don't think he knew really what was going on either. Um, and my mom, like I said at the time, she's raised three of us as a single mother. We had, I think she got a little support from my dad, um, but my brothers, none. So she was trying to raise three of us all on her own. So we struggled like financially and everything for years. So at about that age, I'd moved in with my grandmother,
Mhm.
and And yeah, she didn't tell me anything about anything that I did. I mean, I wasn't honest about everything I was doing either.
Mhm.
I was sneaking and lying,
What
but
kind of what kind of pathway did this eventually land you down? Were there consequences to your actions?
well, before any of that, like I had an event happen. I think what really got me into the drinking and all of that is like an event happened with a boy at school. And then after that, it was just drinking and I guess anything to try to get rid of the fear. That's all it was. It was fear and trying to mask that and find anything to help me feel normal around people.
When you say an event, what do you mean an event happened?
Well, I thought I was going on a date and he drugged my drink and then I was raped and left in the neighborhood on the side of the road, not knowing what was going on.
I'm so sorry to hear that. What eventually happened? How old were you at this time? In high school?
I was 15 when that happened.
So
It
did
was
it?
just, it was downhill from there.
So I'm pretty sure it was. Um, when they who found you?
A girl that went to my school, she found me, brought me back to her house, told her mom. They didn't know what happened exactly because I didn't even know what happened. I just knew I went and met somebody, and that's where I ended up. So they called my grandmother, and she came and picked me up.
Did they eventually take you to the doctor, the paramedics, the hospital, police department?
No, no, it was all shushed after that. Even my mom, my mom didn't even know it happened. Nobody knew it happened until, I mean, this is probably like the fourth time I've even spoken about it. Years later, a few years ago, I told my mom about it. Maybe like
Uh-huh.
8 years ago. I don't remember, but it wasn't well on until I was an adult that I told my mom about it.
So this is crazy. I see where the fear comes in here. So now you have to. Was this a kid? Did you know him at all? Did you go to school with him?
Yeah, I went to school with him.
How do you even function going to school, knowing you got to see this guy? Did you confront him?
No, no, because that part of that was my personality has always been, and that's part of like how I grew up in, fighting and arguing and everything. You just learn to be quiet and not be seen or heard really.
Mhm.
Um, so I developed that where I never confronted anybody about anything. I was afraid of confrontation. The next day at school, um, like a whole group of people knew about what happened, and I was so embarrassed about it that I just went in the bathroom and hid for the rest of the day.
But you eventually have to come out of that bathroom. You eventually have to find a way to deal with this fear factor that you're facing. Do you Who do you talk to? How do you maneuver? And people need to realize you're 15 freaking years old. I mean, did you have a support group at all? Bro, you say you have older brothers and sisters. Did you have anybody that you can talk to about it?
Not for that. That I just did alone. I didn't talk to anybody about it.
I know this is a stupid ass question, but I got to ask. Did he ever come up to you and say anything to you?
No, no. Years later, um, he talked to me years later, but acted like nothing had ever happened.
That's a excuse my French. That's a sick motherfucker. You know that, right? They come back
Yeah.
years later, and how do you even come at somebody years later and even talk to them? I'm just curious. What was his first? What was his first? Why did he even come to you years later?
Um, I think we just happened to see each other on Bourbon Street. I think that's what it was, if I remember correctly. We just both happened to be on Bourbon Street, and he just like like he was trying to catch up. He's smiling and everything.
And you had to deal with this guy all the way till you graduated high school. I take it.
Well, no, because I switched schools not long after that,
Mhm.
and then I started messing up at the other school and just skipping school. Because by that time, well, even before that, I've always had severe social anxiety. So just
Mhm.
being in school was hard enough. And then after that, trying to live, what I felt like I made a name for myself by what happened. So, in high school is rough with the way people talk and make fun of people and, put names on them. So, I didn't go to school much after that. I got pregnant at 17. And then a few weeks after that, I dropped out and got my GED.
That's really sad. And you carried that fear factor for years, and then you wind up having a child. What was that like? Like, how do you keep you? Because you don't keep your trauma so locked away inside, but now you have a child. What do you do now? Do you become overprotective? I mean, what's it like for you being a parent? Because here's a child raising a child now.
Yeah. Yeah, that was hard. Um, we lived with my grandmother for most of my like back and forth. Like I'd move out for a little while and get my own place or move in with somebody and then I'd move back into my grandmother's. Like relationships didn't last. And it just leads to not being able to trust anybody. And I didn't trust anybody around my child either.
Mhm.
So
How are you able to deal with this now? You're a lot older. Naturally, your daughter's probably a lot older now, but this is something that you kept locked away for so long. How difficult was it for you to come out and be the strong woman that you are now?
that took, um, well, for most of my adult life, well, I was an addict. I was mostly addicted to pills back and forth, and I would do other things too. It wasn't just pills, but Xanax was my favorite thing to do. That took all the fear away. I could talk to anybody. I could do anything. I could pretend to be whoever you wanted me to be. So that I struggled with that since really after I had her. After I had my daughter, that's when I really relied on the Xanax daily to get me through. And it wasn't until 2021 when I overdosed for a third time and almost died that they were going to take my kids away after that happened. And I guess that was my wake up call. I don't know why the first two times didn't phase me. I guess because I didn't care. I didn't care what happened to me. I didn't care
Mm.
if I was here or not. Um, but it was them saying that they were going to take my kids. The thought of leaving them with somebody else to take care of, I just couldn't let that happen.
You around how old were you when you had your first OD?
I think I was like 20, and then another when I was 25, 24, 25, and then my third one was at 31.
You said kids with an S. So you have one child at 17, are correct? And then you had two more or another one?
Yeah, I had another one when I was 25. Oh, so maybe the second one was a couple years after that. I had my second one at 24, and then the second OD happened a couple years after that. I was going through a lot with his dad, and that was a terrible relationship. A lot of control, um, a lot of fear and manipulation and narcissism, and I was trying so hard to get away from all of that.
Mhm. When you say the addiction to pills, when were these narcotics introduced to you? While you was in school during the time of that one incident at 15 years old? Was that when you started experimenting with the
I
pills?
started experimenting with that like maybe closer to 17 years old. Before that, I had only smoked weed and drank.
Let me ask you a question. I know it might sound crazy, and you're young. You don't seem to really have a support group.
I do now. I
But
do
then
now.
how were you but back then you didn't seem to have a really a support group. So how often did the fear of just not being here anymore surface with you?
Um, well, the fear of not being here anymore.
Yeah, when you say you try to kill yourself, were you trying to kill yourself back then too?
I don't. I don't think it was intentional. I wasn't. I didn't. I wasn't doing it to end my life, but at the same time, I didn't care if it did. You just get to. I just got, especially with the last time, I just got to be where I was the second and the last time. I felt so hopeless and that there was no way out, that there was nothing better out there for me,
Mm.
between the relationships and the relationships with some family members. It didn't seem like there was anything better for me.
When did things change? How did you make things change? The reason why I'm saying this, you use some pretty powerful words. You use hopeless and you use fear. But now you're competing and getting ready to be a national level bodybuilder. That's you got to come in with a whole different mindset. You have to let fear go. You have to
Yeah,
let hopelessness go. When did the trajectory change, and how did bodybuilding come into your and to let's call it what it is? Someone give you an alternative to life.
yeah. When I got sober, in August 2021, I was determined to never be that person again, to never be that weak. And yeah, I was just sick of being so weak and not being able to follow through and not being strong enough to just do what needed to be done. I was really sick of that. So I decided that I was never going to be back there again. And I learned how to change my brain and heal trauma through proper nutrition, feeding my mind and body the right foods, because I was off of all medications, like everything. So I had to
Mm.
learn how to make things better inside without that crutch, without a medication. So the nutrition, and then the exercise. That's how I got so into the exercise, because I found that that really helped with the anxiety.
Mhm.
And then I just decided that everything that I did from that point forward, I felt so much fear
Mhm.
all the time that I was going to just run towards the fear.
Mm.
If something scared me, I was going to challenge myself to do it and try to overcome that fear. And that's where the bodybuilding came in a couple years after I started really getting into fitness.
Mhm.
Um, I saw people on stage and saw women doing it, and I knew I knew there were certain people in my family that would absolutely die seeing me up there, flaunting my body in a bikini. And then in the back of my head too is the way I was raised in that church,
Yeah.
not being allowed to wear pants or shorts or anything, being a woman, going from that to being on stage in a bikini, in a little skimpy bikini, and then the muscle and everything on top of it.
Like, now that you look back on your trajectory of life, being traumatized by a belief system of religion, then going out into a different scenario with different cultures, um, being attacked, call it what it is. That's a lot of shit on your plate at such a young age, and then keeping that locked up inside for so many years. Like, you now have children. How do you navigate all this and keep your children safe, but not keep your children in a fear-based mindset like how society and your family had you?
You know, that's a big thing for me with my kids is I don't want them being raised that way, where where they feel like they can't be open about anything or free to be themselves. I
Mhm.
try to be more accepting and keep an open mind and not shut them down if I don't agree with something that they do or say or something that they want to do.
Mhm.
I want
I mean,
them I
go
want
ahead.
them to be able to feel free to be themselves and to learn on their own too. And
Well,
to be more open about my personal struggles and things that are out there in the world that they do have to be careful of. Not to scare them, but just an honest conversation, because it too, when I was a kid, you didn't talk about sex or drugs or any of that. You didn't Nobody spoke about any of that. So I had never heard anything about any of that before. And I don't want my kids growing up not knowing what's out there and what they need to pay attention to.
what has been the most difficult part of that journey with explaining stuff to your kids based on your experience?
Um, it, I just recently, like the past few years, have been able to be more open with my kids about that. Before, it I was exactly like my family and didn't talk about anything and pretended like anytime anything happened, just pretended like nothing happened. We didn't talk about stuff. But I'm trying to break that cycle.
Mhm.
So that's been hard.
You shared this. You said you shared it with certain individuals in your family. What did they tell you when you opened up and told them the things that you've gone through since the age of 15 and probably before 15? 15 just really was just probably one of the most, was probably the major turning point. But when you decided to open up and share that with them, your brothers, your sisters, your whole family, what was their take on it?
My mom especially was very upset about it because she felt like nobody told her. She didn't know that it happened.
Mhm.
And I think she feels that if she did know it happened, maybe she could have done something, or maybe she could have got me some help. I think it makes her feel bad that she didn't know and I kept it to myself for all those years. Well, my grandmother and I kept it to ourselves and
Your
nobody told.
grandmother knew you. Your grandmother knew you went through this, but she chose not to tell your mom. Well, and even your dad, right? Probably because maybe
My dad
she knew that
probably
he
still
couldn't
doesn't
take it.
know.
Your dad doesn't know either.
I don't think so. Not unless my mom told him. I never told him.
I'm pretty sure if he knew, he would have already reached out to you and said something. So by them keeping it a family secret, you ask yourself, is that really a good thing to do? Because you kept that secret for so long, and luckily you was able to come out. Um, I'm not gonna say a better person, but a fearless person. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
Wow. I didn't know we was gonna get that deep on this episode. That's you
I
know,
didn't either.
yeah. I mean, I appreciate you taking time to explain to me exactly the topic of the show, fearless. And coming out of that, and you became your own hero, so to speak, and you're still doing that now.
Yeah, I decided to stop living my life as the victim and save myself, not sit
It's a
and
good.
wait for anybody else to save me.
Now let me ask you before we wrap up. Let's go to a lighter side. We ain't gonna leave them. We ain't gonna leave them crying on here because at the end of the day, you took the word hopeless and made hope, and took the word fearless and got rid of the word fear and made yourself fearless. You're now competing. What's that like? You got people in your family that's going, "Oh my gosh, she's on the stage and she's got that on," and well, that's you're changing the narrative of your life. What's that like for you? What was your first show like?
My first show, oh my gosh, it was terrifying. It was terrifying, but I just felt so free afterwards. After I walked off that stage, after they called me out the first time, I just felt so amazing. I felt like even though everybody out there was looking at me and judging me, because I went up there not completely in shape. My first show, I was not very lean. And I went out there anyway, knowing that I shouldn't go out there yet. I should keep, wait until I lost a little more body fat. But I did it anyway. I said, I keep pushing it back and putting it off. I'm just doing it no matter what anybody thinks.
So how
And
many
it
shows
was
have you
amazing.
done so far?
What?
How many shows have you done so far?
I've done that one in 23. I did two in 2024, and then I did one this year in 2025. And then I did a photo shoot the past 2 years. Last year, the photo shoot, I was still like felt inhibited and shy, and the photo shoot this year just felt so amazing
Why did it feel so amazing?
because each year that I allow myself like free to be myself and to not worry about what everybody else thinks, the more
Mhm.
confident I become in who I am and who I want to be. And that last photo shoot I did, I just I felt I felt like I showed up as me for the first time in my life.
Now, let me ask you a question before we wrap up. If if you had to look back on the hands of time, what would you tell yourself if you had to look in the mirror based on what you went through? What would you tell yourself now?
I would tell myself that to not live your life trying to please everybody and doing what they want you to do, and figure out who you are and who you want to be and who you can feel good about. When you go to sleep at night, you can think, I was a good person today, or I like who I'm becoming, and you stick with that. Don't do what other people think that you should do. Do what feels true to you.
You definitely are doing that and a heck of a lot more. How can the viewers reach out to you and follow your beautiful journey?
I'm on Facebook as Amanda Vanderslice. I have the Meta Verified badge, and I'm also on Instagram, either under Amanda Vanderslice or VSlice90 on Instagram.
You know what, Amanda? Thank you so much for taking time out. I know you're at the gym. I don't want to take away from your training. I know how it is when you're in that gym. You want to get back in that beast mindset. If we can ever
Yeah.
help to get ready for our next show, reach out to us on that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, this has been another exciting episode of Andre the Beast Crayton Show.